Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Life as a Neurodivergent Student podcast series, a collaboration between Student Minds and all things mental health. I'm Evelyn.
And I'm Melody. This is episode 2, Advocating for Yourself. And whether you're in education or at work, we hope that this episode is helpful in any context you might find yourself in.
Today, we're breaking down the how of self-advocacy. It's about understanding your rights, building your confidence, and learning how to make your needs heard without guilt or fear.
But also acknowledging that advocacy isn't easy. It takes effort, emotional energy, and sometimes insider knowledge that not everyone has.
Let's start with the legal foundation, the Equality Act 2010. It covers both university and the workplace. But knowing about it and knowing how to use it are two different things.
For example, in university, there's often a deadline to submit medical evidence, and the support you get can vary. What works in seminars might not apply in exams. You really have to navigate a lot of admin.
Yes, and in work, people might not even realize they're entitled to adjustments like flexible hours or assistive tech. Employees have a duty both under the Equality Act and health and safety laws. I once supported a student who didn't know she could request a quieter space to take her exams. She thought that was special treatment.
But no, this is a legal right under Section 20.
That's why I tell people to keep a one-page rights dossier. It should have key legal clauses, past examples of what's worked, and contact info for support services.
But even with that, asking can be very hard, and the process can feel like extra work, and it can really be exhausting just to explain yourself. There's definitely a hidden burden here.
And many of us have internalized that asking equals weakness, especially if we're being taught to push through or not make a fuss.
So we thought it'd be really helpful to talk about support systems. You really don't have to advocate alone.
Definitely not. In uni, that might mean the Disability Services Officer, a trusted academic advisor, or even your student's union neurodiversity rep.
And conversely, at work, it could be someone in HR, a mentor who's neurodivergent, or members of the employee resource groups like Enable or similar networks that you might have in your workplace.
One tip I give people is to start small. Share little wins, like, since I got my noise cancelling headphones, my error rate dropped 30%. It opens the door.
Yes, definitely. It's really important. And this kind of language shows impact without putting people on the defensive. And it reframes adjustments as beneficial, not burdensome. So they see the overall value you're bringing to the organization by speaking up.
But here's the problem. Not everyone has access to those networks. And the people most in need often support others before they're supported themselves.
Exactly. I know so many students who act as unofficial peer counselors, but feel they can't ask for anything for themselves. And that's not really the way that we want it to continue.
That's why we need community, safe spaces, groups where you don't have to obtain your needs, where you're not othered.
And it's so important to build that support before you hit a crisis. So it's like a cushion, not a parachute. And it's much better to do that before you enter university, for example, or before you enter a workplace.
Beautiful way of putting it. That's why peer networks, disability societies, and identity-based spaces matter so much.
All right, let's say someone's ready to ask for what they need after understanding their rights. How do they do it without freezing up or sounding very unsure?
Personally, I would use this four-part formula. So firstly, talk about the context, e.g. during lectures. Then talk about your challenge. So I find it hard to focus after 20 minutes of a noisy room. Next, talk about your solution. Can we try a quieter space or allow short breaks in between? And finally, talk about the benefit. It will help me stay engaged and reduce errors.
That's so clear, concise, and focused on mutual benefit. That's really powerful. So just to go over that again, that's context, challenge, solution, and benefit. Amazing.
And if you can, use I statements backed by data. So when I use text-to-speech software, I process documents much faster. So that kind of specificity really lands.
Another important thing to add here is that you might not know everything that is available to you. So doing some research about what adjustments could be available is really important for being able to suggest a solution. But let's be honest, for a lot of people, especially international students, or if you're from a collectivist culture, speaking up can feel very uncomfortable, even dangerous. There's an extra burden here, especially when it comes to intersectional dynamics.
I've heard things like, we wouldn't say that in my culture, or fears about being seen as aggressive or high maintenance. Gender and race dynamics make it worse.
It's not just discomfort, there are real risks. You can be dismissed, labeled difficult, or passed over. That's why this isn't really a level playing field. And of course, adverse experiences can impact your willingness to want to go back and ask for help.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's why we need systemic change. But until we get there, framing your ask with clarity and purpose gives you a stronger chance of being heard.
Great. So I have another question. Do you remember your first time asking for a major adjustment?
It was my last workplace. I asked for noise cancelling headphones, flexible brakes, and a bit of clarity around expectations. One manager actually said to me, "But you don't seem that autistic." And another questioned whether I'd even been properly diagnosed. And he was looking at my diagnosis and wondering if it was a legit one, because it was privately sourced and not from the GP. So I had to like spend a lot of time explaining to him that the guy who diagnosed me was also like a medical practitioner and qualified.
That is genuinely an awful, awful experience and really invalidating. And it's like your experience isn't valid unless it fits the idea of what autism looks like, for example.
Yeah, exactly. And people will comment when I wore headphones. One colleague actually asked me, "Why are you wearing those? You look like you're antisocial. You don't like talking to us. Are you trying to like block everyone out or something?" And it was like, I owe them an explanation. But at the same time, like I was in a workplace where I didn't really feel safe telling my peers that I had some kind of disability. It was quite a competitive place, and I don't feel like they would really support me through it. Because first of all, not many people know what autism is, especially in women. And second of all, I don't really trust those people to like take this information and use it to help me instead of like hurting me or something.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, this does really sound like quite a sad experience, actually. It's such an insensitive thing to say, and it really just shows how much education is really required. I mean, that kind of policing, people might not realize, they might think it's sort of genuine questioning, but it adds so much invisible pressure, and you end up questioning yourself and trying to mask things, for example, or wondering if you come across too different or too sensitive. And especially if you're coming from a background where you already do that, this is just so much more of a burden. And I'm actually really sorry to hear that you went through that.
Yeah, definitely. You definitely start questioning yourself, is it worth the hassle? And that's dangerous because it pushes people out of work or into masking to the point of burnout. Like I thought to myself at the point, was it even worth telling people or telling my managers about this? I could just like carry on masking. And it's a very, like, genuinely very unpleasant experience.
I've definitely had the experience where I've had to think, do I want to, tell this person about my neurodivergence at the expense of maybe getting the job or at the expense of feeling like they're going to think I'm a burden. And all this because the system makes it hard to ask and even harder to be believed.
Yeah, totally. And that's why I try to be more open about neurodivergence to people that I trust. So, especially people who are also neurodivergent. I mean, if sharing my experience helps someone else avoid those traps or feel less alone, then it's worth it. But I do have to add, you don't have to share anything about your disability and medical conditions if you don't feel safe or you feel like the people you're telling wouldn't treat it with good faith.
But I think there's definitely no urge to. But if you do want to, it does do a lot of good. I definitely changed my behavior and felt more comfortable in workplaces just knowing that, like, my supervisor is neurodivergent. That's made me more comfortable, for example.
Yeah, definitely. I think it varies from workplace to workplace, and it just depends on how or what the culture is like where you work. So definitely find out about the culture before you disclose. So to sum up, advocating yourself is a skill, one that gets easier with practice.
It's also a journey, and you definitely don't have to get it perfect. You just have to start. And we've both done it before, and it can also be a very, very empowering process. And whether you've had a knockback the first time or you're just a bit concerned about how to go about it, we hope we've given you some tips. But we wanted to emphasize that the process of getting adjustment and seeing just how much of a difference can be extremely empowering because it's about understanding your inherent value. And if you do that at university, for example, you can take that into the place of work, you can take that into your life after, and it changes your mindset about that you're neurodivergent doesn't put you at a disadvantage. It's just that the world needs to catch up to be able to accommodate you properly.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Build your rights dossier, find your people, practice how you ask, and trust that your needs are valid. Like never feel like what you're doing is a burden. Those are your legal protected rights under the law. And don't let other people try to like invalidate your needs and your rights.
Just to round up, you deserve to thrive, not just survive. You are definitely not asking for too much, and you're asking for what you need to succeed.